sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to My Sister's a Therapist. This is a podcast that a comedian makes with her sister, who is a therapist. My name is Virginia Jones. I'm the comedian, but my sister's a therapist.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to Titan of Taunts, Virginia Jones.
I do like taunting people.
But you also overcome those who try to taunt you.
That's true. I'm a Titan.
You best them.
Laura, do you have any updates from listener land?
From the land of listeners? Newsflash, our Jackie Cation episode, What is Love, is still our most popular.
And we have something in the works that we don't know when it'll happen and we don't know when you're going to hear it, but we're very excited about it.
Incredibly excited about an upcoming guest.
I did spend some quality time with Jackie Cation and her lovely husband, Andy Ashcraft. He flew into Portland to support her when she was recording her special in Portland, and they really are adorable and some of my favorite people.
She had a lot of good things to say. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go back to our Jackie Cation episode.
I'm sure he's not perfect, but I don't know at this point what that would be. He is a backseat driver. I do know that.
To me, that would be automatically counting it.
Deal breaker.
Sorry, bro. Until we get a self-driving car, I'm not interested. Here's our top 10 listenership by location. United States holding strong at 65.8%.
That's nice because that's where we both live.
The UK is second, followed by Turkey, Brazil, Germany, France, Canada, Spain, Italy, Thailand.
I don't know if Thailand's come up before. Sawadee ka, Thailand.
Yeah, Thailand is our number 10. Australia didn't even make the top 10.
Wow, you Aussies. Very disappointed.
We are still 51.1% female listeners,
Whoop, whoop.
45.9% male, 2.4% non-specified, and 0.5% non-binary.
And you guys are our favorite 0.5%. You're our number one in our
I
hearts.
agree. You're our number one. We may only be 0.5% to you, but you're our number one. And then with our age groups, I think there have been a couple shifts here. Majority of our listeners are between the ages of 45 and 59. No surprise there. Followed very closely by 35 to 44. And then the next group down, this is actually going to surprise you, is 23 to 27.
Well, hello.
It looks like the Utes are interested in what we have to say.
Hello, Zennials, because they're between millennials and Gen Z.
I'm going to trust you on that. That's Listener Corner for you. So, Virginia, this week's topic is your topic, and I get to be the potted plant. What's on the docket?
A fun thing about being a stand-up comedian is you get the, I'm going to say, opportunity to talk to people who you wouldn't ordinarily talk to. Drunk people in bars, comedians with serious personality disorders, all kinds of people. Last week, I had a conversation with someone who I'm going to kindly refer to as an idiot.
Would you deign to call them a potted plant?
It's not fair to say that they're an idiot, although I think they are, but we just have a real difference of opinion, and that is about morality. The person said to me that without religion, people would just be roaming the streets, killing each other. It would just be the purge immediately.
Did this person have a prostate by chance?
I assume that they did. I didn't check, but I'm guessing yes. I said people did not just randomly murder people before religion was made up by people. When I became an atheist, he put a little tin crown on my head. It was nice. They had really good snacks afterwards. But when I went through that ceremony and became an atheist, I acknowledged that my own morality is from myself. I do operate with the golden rule, which is older than religion. Hammurabi's code of an eye for an eye predates Christianity. I think of Christians who think that they need this to be good people are just inherently bad people. If you really need someone to tell you murder is wrong, I don't know what to say about it.
If you have to read it in a book, then you're probably a bad person.
Right. I was reading about this guy, Lawrence Kohlberg, who defines 6 developmental stages of morality. Are you familiar with Lawrence Kohlberg?
Yes.
In 1956, he did a study of 72 boys between ages 10 and 16. Why would he talk to girls? No reason.
Women weren't even in any kind of medical testing until 1993, so who cares?
Boys are the standard. We just watched a very strange film called The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T. In it, this piano instructor who goes insane, mad with power, wants to create a machine with 500 little boys playing piano. So there's all these little boys in striped shirts and dungarees with rocks in their pockets and holding frogs and stuff. Because what girl would play piano? I guess What girl would he be interested in having in this giant machine? It does look strange now to refer to all these children, and they're all boy children. But back to Mr. Kohlberg. So he would ask these boys questions about morally gray areas, something that's not super clear. Should a poor man steal bread to feed his starving children? The Les Miserables question. Side note, Trump says it's his favorite musical because he doesn't know what anything means.
He doesn't understand subtext.
Doesn't even understand text.
Yeah, we don't know that he can read.
He would ask these boys these questions and note their changes through the age ranges. The big question was the Heinz dilemma. A woman's on her deathbed. There's one drug the doctor said would save her. It's a form of radium that a druggist in the same town has recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to produce. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about $1,000. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later. The druggist said, "No, I discovered the drug and I'm going to make money from it." So Heinz got desperate and broke into the man's laboratory to steal the drug for his wife. Is that the right thing to do?
My only question is, did he put ketchup on it?
The first stage of morality is a little kid's obedience. He should not steal the drug because it is illegal. He will be put in prison, which means he is a bad person. The second is self-interest, and I'll go into more details later. Prison is an awful place. He would probably be unhappier in prison than he would with his wife's death. When people get a little older, they're more motivated by conformity. What's the norm? What would regular people do? They would argue, yes, he should steal the drug because his wife expects it. This is how you are a good husband. Or he shouldn't do it because stealing is bad and he is not a criminal. He tried to do everything he could before he stole, and you can't blame him for stealing. Then people get to a real fascist place called law and order. Whatever the law is, that's the correct thing.
I think that's the way our mother operates.
Yes.
There's no gray areas.
There's no gray areas.
Is it a rule or is it not a rule?
Right. His wife will benefit, but he should also take the prescribed punishment for the crime or pay the druggist what he is owed. Criminals cannot just run around without regard for the law. Actions have consequences. The last two are called post-conventional. So this is people who've moved out of normal conventions. According to this theory, most people are at law and order. Most people never progress past that. The next is social contract orientation. Everyone has a right to life regardless of the law. So it is morally correct for him to steal because his wife's life is more important than the $2,000 the druggist wants. Then we get to phase 6, which is universal human ethics. Saving a human life is a more fundamental value than the property rights of another person. To vote that he should take the drug, yes, his wife's life is more important than money. But to argue he shouldn't take the drug is others may need the medicine just as badly and their lives are equally significant. So if he's taking this one dose of the drug, that deprives it from someone else who maybe had the $2,000. In phase 1, pre-conventional, 1, rules are absolute. We determine right from wrong based on whether you get punished. This is a little kid's viewpoint. And it is very simple. It's a very simple way to live. It offers no subtext, no subtlety.
Yeah.
No nuance. It's just that. Is it right or is it wrong? When people get a little bit older, they are based on reward and punishment. Right and wrong are based on what gets rewards. What are the flaws in that? You can get rewarded for lying. You can say, I won the spelling bee. And your mom says, oh my God, we're going to take you out for ice cream.
I will be rewarded for being an ICE agent. I get $50,000 signing bonus.
I can take candy from a stranger and all I have to do is get in the van. We can see that that view of morality is limited. That is going to get you into some kind of trouble. The next phase that Kohlberg observed was conventional. Many people feel this way. The first phase is good boy, nice girl. Morality is determined by how happy it makes other people. So being seen as good is the goal. Is this what is going to make other people think that I'm a good person?
We look at the Nazi Party, a lot of children were encouraged to turn in their parents because they would get props from the government.
They would get rewarded.
It was technically the right thing to do.
Right. If the Nazi Party is running the country and you're doing things that promote the Nazi Party, you're being
a good citizen.
The second phase of conventional is respecting authority. Respect my authority. Obeying the laws sustains society. We have laws for a reason.
And this is an area that I really struggle with. And as a parent, I'm really struggling with it a lot because my son is still on that earlier phase. He'll say, well, that's not the right thing to do. And I go, well, I'm a grown up and I get to make up the rules for myself. I was confronted just recently. We were getting on a plane and I was talking with my friend about my luggage situation, because technically I have a backpack and a carry-on bag, but my backpack is a specially designed backpack that really carries what a full carry-on would have. What I told my friend was, here's the trick. You get in at the front, you throw the backpack in first, and then by the time you get to your seat, you only have your suitcase and you just throw that up. And then you're light and lean with your phone and your headphones. And she was saying, that's not right.
She pointed out that you're a bad person, which I've known.
She pointed out that I was not following the rules. And I said, but the rules are arbitrary and they're made up by somebody and it's promoted by capitalism. It used to be I could check a gigantic bag that was the size of my whole body for free. And now they've decided to take that right away from me. So I'm going to have to figure it out for myself.
Your point is it's you versus the airline, that their policy has changed. And especially if you're flying on Southwest, people would put up with things like not having an assigned seat and just having to rush to the front of the line. But from a moral philosophy sense, when you put two carry-ons in the overhead compartment, you are screwing people behind you. It's not really you versus the airline. It's you versus other people, because people who are later in the line or who boarded later are going to wind up checking their bags. But
I was in group 9, so I don't think anyone was behind me.
this is something that you could use as a financial justification. If you were in first class, you could justify and say, I paid more, so I get on first, so I get as much overhead luggage as I want.
I think the way I justify it is I say that these rules are arbitrary and made up, so I can do what I want.
You're in a post-moral
Yeah, I think I am.
environment. Okay. Then we have post-conventional. You may be able to slot yourself into one of these. Only 10 to 15% of humans ever reach this level 5, which is not the nightclub that we went to when we were children in a mall. It was named that because it was level 5 of a mall, and I thought it was the coolest place in the world.
I guess we were Megyn Kelly adults.
Yeah, Megyn Kelly adults. And when Megyn Kelly says
There's a big difference between an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old. I found out Megyn Kelly has a 14-year-old daughter.
Yeah, and she should let that daughter date 50-year-old men. She's changing the language. Speaking of morality, when she refers to a 15-year-old as barely legal, that is not what that is. Barely legal is 18 and 30 minutes. 15 is not legal.
Right. 15 is still, in the eyes of the law, a child.
And why do we have that law, Laura? We have that law to keep old men from victimizing children.
Refer back to whatever episode that was.
Right.
Like an hour talking
about child marriage. If we didn't have this law, old men would marry 8-year-olds.
It doesn't seem to have much of an impact, let's be honest.
Megyn Kelly trying to normalize the molestation of children for political reasons really puts her in the 8th circle of hell of women for me. She should not be allowed to go to brunch anymore. She should be stripped of her earring and high heel privileges.
No more manicures.
This is the worst kind of pick-me behavior in the world. And even Republicans are calling her on it because Republicans, guess what, have children and don't want those children to be molested by adults.
Megyn Kelly also has a child.
She's on level 2, I think. Right and wrong are based on what gets rewards. She feels she could be rewarded from the fascist system that she is operating in by defending sex with children. Post-conventional morality. Level 5 is authority may be respected, but individual rights may supersede repressive or restrictive laws.
That's where I'm at.
You'll take into account that you're not supposed to take 2 pieces of carry-on luggage. And also people will do this. They'll say, well, the other people are doing it.
Oh, I don't do that.
So I can do it. One of the first times I got pulled over by the cops, I was driving and it was in Texas where it was just gridlock traffic on the freeway.
But was it cops, plural?
There were 2 cops involved. People were driving off the freeway into the ditch and getting on the frontage road. They were not close to an exit. I did that in my 1984 Volkswagen Rabbit and I got pulled over. And the guy said, why did you do that? And I said, well, I saw other people were doing it. That's not a good way to decide whether or not to do something. And I said, okay. So level 6, and there's a real questionable citation here. Level 6 is universal ethical principles. Your own conscience is your own judge, and you are thinking about the rights of everybody. Kohlberg said that Mahatma Gandhi was one of the few people to ever achieve this level.
Except when it came to molesting his niece.
Yes, except for when it came to sexualizing and sleeping with children.
And his abject racism against Black people.
But apart from that, he was an ethical ideal. Kohlberg's theory was radical because before that, psychologists thought that children were having morality imposed upon them, that your parents would tell you how to behave. And then behavioralists thought that morality was based on avoiding bad feelings. I don't want to feel guilty.
It falls under that idea that multiple things can be true at the same time. I think we learn morality from our parents, especially when my son was a child. He had no moral compass at all.
Right.
He was
a wild animal being put into tennis shoes and run ragged across the world.
exactly. He was all for him. He was numero uno, and that was it.
A friend of mine, he's a dad now, so he's doing, wow, fatherhood really changes you humor, which is amazing.
The reason it's trite is because it's true.
It's very true. But he said children are great until they are verbal. And then when they start talking, they will just lie their little diapers off because they want to optimize their experience and they are the center of their own universe.
Yeah, I remember wishing and begging and praying for my son to be able to speak. And then when he could, I thought, boy, I wish he was mute.
I'm seeing TikToks of little boys much younger than your child and thinking, oh, I remember when he was that little. I wish he was that little now.
They probably had all the same thoughts and feelings, but I just didn't know what they were.
Right. So you could just think, always thinking, oh, this is so nice. I'm so glad my mommy's here and taking care of me.
I'm feeling so grateful for everything that my mother provides for me on a daily basis.
And now he's not. And you know he's not because he says it. Kohlberg believed children developed moral code and respect, empathy, and love through interactions with others, not just your parents, but other children, teachers, seeing how the world is. And I think that interacting with others has made me both more empathetic and also less patient with others.
I noticed on the school field trip that I recently attended that was kind of where my son kept correcting me. Well, they said you couldn't do this or you couldn't do that.
That's for the little people.
People don't get to tell me what to do.
I thought we would spend a little time going through some popular moral scenarios. Some other classic morality scenarios. The trolley problem. You know the trolley problem.
The trolley problem was elucidated on the television show The Good Place.
If you talk to any philosophy major, he will do the trolley problem with you, and there's no correct answer. There's only what is less bad. What is the least bad thing?
And I noticed how you said he. So you're telling me that all philosophy majors are men?
All philosophy majors who are going to sit you down and tell you about the frickin' trolley problem tend to have a prostate. In the trolley problem, a runaway trolley is headed toward 5 people tied to the tracks. You can pull a lever to divert it to a track when only one person is tied. Do you pull it? It's terrible because it puts you in a position of being the arbiters. Many people say, I'm just not going to pull the lever. I am going to watch 5 people die, but it won't be my responsibility because I've not done anything. But you've not pulled it.
This is my no-show policy. I don't want to decide whether your no-show was worthy or not. I just give everybody one freebie, and then after that, you get charged.
Yeah, you're not in the position of saying, oh, I had to go to the hospital. Okay, well, that's probably okay. Well, I had a nail appointment that I had already rescheduled.
Yeah, one person got upset with me because it was their dog's nail appointment. And I said, I'm sorry, I understand you care about your dog, but the rule applies to everybody equally.
The malfunctioning golem. A golem is a man-made human form made out of clay. In the Jewish tradition, you put a scroll into its mouth that has a spell on it or a prayer, and it brings the golem to life. It's a robot. It's a robot before there's robots. You are sent to decommission a golem, but you discover it has become sentient and self-aware. Does it deserve the same rights as other sentient beings? This is what Blade Runner is. What does it mean to be a person? When does someone become a person? When do you have to stop treating a robot like a robot and treat it like a person?
And why don't we just treat everybody equally?
What's so wrong with just treating everybody like a person? Because they get rights, and that's a pain in the ass.
I hear this phrase bandied around a lot. He gets rights because he's human. Why doesn't every living being get rights?
That's why we're hippie vegetarians. Carnivores are like, well, people deserve this, and then non-people deserve lesser. I just don't think you should be cruel to any living thing. Laura and I get a lot of requests for appearances on My Sister's a Therapist. And thank you, everybody, for your notes. They're just being sent by people who've never listened to the show. And so I usually just ignore them. And I got an email from a man who said, hey, I used to be a real piece of crap. My marriage was terrible. And my wife and I were about to get a divorce. There was a restraining order and there was all kinds of chaos. And I realized I was the problem. I learned that I was an avoidant and I wrote a book about it. And I want to come on and talk about it.
And my thought was, no, I'm not interested in a person who has a restraining order's opinions.
I sent it to my sister. Then this guy had the prostate to write back. I really want to circle back and ask if I can be on your show. And I wrote him back and said, if you'd ever listened to one episode of our show, you would know that you're not welcome here. And we are not going to have a man whose poor wife had to get a restraining order against him.
We don't do DV men, bro.
No, thanks, bro. Other personal dilemmas. This is a pretty common one. You cheated on your partner, you know you'll never do it again, and the person you cheated with is out of your life, and you've learned your lesson. It'll never happen again. But you have this feeling in your heart, you have a bad guilt feeling. Do you tell your partner knowing the truth could end the relationship, or do you keep the secret for their happiness? What do you think?
So according to Esther Perel, if you do a one-off thing with somebody, do not tell your partner because you're only doing it to assuage your own guilt and it will cause way more damage to your relationship than if you tell them nothing.
Yes.
So I'm going to go with Esther Perel on that one.
I think that's a good tactic. It's a selfish act. You think, oh, I want to be totally honest. That's not kind.
You're going to ruin their life for probably 2 years as they imagine every part of the scenario. And you're also going to strain your marriage, probably to the point of divorce.
Right. In this moral view, if you were a child, you would say, you should tell your partner because that's the right thing to do. You should tell the partner because that would be the legal thing to do. But in real life, you're doing it for selfish reasons.
And you're going to cause more harm than good. That's my moral line. I ask myself, is the thing I'm doing going to harm more than it helps? And that's how I make decisions.
What you should do is take your mistake and use it to work on yourself and say, I don't want to put myself in a position where I feel this way. The next time that I am tempted by another person or another situation, I want to remind myself of this moment.
Right. And I'm going to process this with my therapist so I can figure out what my motivation was and why I did it.
Futuristic dilemmas. Should parents be allowed to genetically screen embryos to select for certain traits like intelligence or appearance?
It's your money.
And people are already doing it. It's concerning because it contributes to a richer ruling class that is genetically better.
It's called eugenics. I was listening to a TikTok recently. It was this woman who had been watching a lot of classic films, and she was saying it's really hard to go back to modern film because in classic films, people had character in their faces and everybody looked different. And now everybody looks the same because of surgery.
I have this problem with actresses where I get beautiful blonde actresses confused, and I used to feel bad about it, but I'm like, they all look the same.
Well, they have the same doctor, so why wouldn't they look the same?
Someone gets very popular, like a Nicole Kidman, and then everybody's agent, everybody's manager is saying, you should do that thing that Nicole Kidman does where she has a super smooth, giant baby dome-like forehead. Or you should do that Nicole Kidman thing where her nose is kind of like triangular, has a little tiny bump on it and very smooth everywhere else. So these social pressures contribute to just everyone organically, gradually becoming Nicole Kidman. And then we have an all Nicole Kidman universe.
I could choose worse universes to live in, but the idea that rich people are going to create more, genetically superior children, they're already winning anyway. It's just going to be more of the same. There is no way to limit this gap. We're in a K-hole, and that's the way we are.
When Laura says we're in a K, she's talking about 20% of America, at least, is shooting up financially, and 80% is going straight into the toilet. And that's where
I'm in the 80% and loving it.
AI and ethics. Is it ethical to use AI for important decisions like criminal sentencing or medical diagnoses, even though it could lead to bias? And here, I don't think AI is in any kind of place where we can use it for that because it's just going to say, yeah, black guy, life sentence. But it could get to a place where it's a lot more neutral and is able to make balanced decisions. But this also reminds me of the dilemma in Minority Report, which I watched 20 years after everyone else watched it. So it's very fresh on my mind. The dilemma there was these precogs can see crimes and you can prevent crimes, but that means people are going to prison for crimes that they didn't commit. Dilemma 2, these precogs have terrible lives. They are pumped full of drugs and live in a vat of slime and just see murders all the time because it benefits society. Tom Cruise is arresting people and he feels justified in it because he's lost a child and he knows that if he'd had this technology, he wouldn't have lost that child. So he's very motivated to solve these pre-crimes.
I like the idea because my thought is, okay, let's go find this person before they commit this crime and let's turn their life around so that they don't commit a crime.
Right.
Why not try that instead of arresting people?
Where it all falls down is Tom Cruise is put in a situation where he could commit a crime, he could kill someone, but he decides not to. Even though it has been predicted that he was going to do it, he doesn't do it. And he realizes that humans do have the capacity to change and learn.
Right. We have free will.
And that's something that philosophy majors will talk to you for a long time about.
That's why I avoid philosophy majors.
So my last one is euthanasia. Your elderly father is sick and dying. and he is not having fun being on the planet anymore, he asks you to help end his life, but it is illegal in your country for you to do so. What is the moral thing to do? Is it what the law says, or is it something that's going to help your father?
Well, you already know what I think. I don't follow
Right.
laws.
I would kill my dad in that situation, even if he didn't want to.
There was a really interesting euthanasia documentary that I was going to try to quickly look up, but I don't think I can find it. I watched it in a class that I took in college. It was a very exciting title. It was called Death and Dying, and it was a sociology class. And they start out the film. This woman has like stage 12 cancer. She wants to do the shot. As the film goes on, it's more and more, when finally we end up with a 22-year-old woman who has anorexia nervosa and can't keep weight on, and she just doesn't want to be alive anymore. So we're supposed to be figuring out what's the right thing. The story that I make up is if you don't want to be alive, that's your right.
But also, sometimes people will be in a mental state where they don't want to be alive, and that could pass. That woman could get better. She has the capacity to get better. I think it's clearest when the person is not going to get better.
That's obvious. There's no moral question there.
There is to some people. The idiot that I was talking to would say, no, God wants you to stay in your meat suit until he takes it away.
I feel like everybody is allowed to do what they want to do. And as long as it's not hurting other people, I'm okay with it.
I took a class on death and dying, but it was a philosophy class. It was about death rituals in other cultures and how other peoples have dealt with death and religion and blah, blah. It wasn't part of the regular curriculum. It was just this professor wanted to teach it. He brought all the goss to the yard. A couple weeks in, he disappeared, and there was a substitute teacher for the rest of the class. They just said, he's gone. We do the rest of the semester. It's not quite the same because the guy doesn't have the same passion for the topic. Years later, I found out what happened to my professor, which was he had kidnapped a sex worker and was trying to make the perfect woman with a combination of hypnosis, drugs, electroshock, and was just doing all kinds of stuff and was torturing a woman in the closet.
It sounds like it didn't work.
It didn't work. He was, quote, working with her for many months. And finally, he's like, I have enough control of her that I can take her out in public and she's not going to do anything. And they went out to a grocery store. She was handcuffed to the cart, but he had thrown like a pashmina over her wrist, so just a casual observer might not notice she was handcuffed to the cart. He stepped away to do something, and she ran up and said, hi, I'm chained to this shopping cart. This man has kidnapped me, and he's been torturing me. But then he went to jail, and no one ever told us, hey, your professor has really experimented with some moral boundaries. In his defense, he was tired of dating regular women who had opinions and stuff.
Oh, I get it. I just think potentially, I feel like there's a little bit of a fly in the ointment of this experiment.
Really? Why so?
There's just a few things.
There's a couple questionable things.
There's not a control group, first of all.
Well, that's true.
Right?
I guess the control group is all the other women.
The rest of the women he's ever met in his life. It doesn't sound hygienic. Most of the time, experiments need to be clean. Most experiments, if we're looking at reputable sources, don't happen in motel bathrooms.
No. On the euthanasia tip, you might ask yourself, what happened to Lawrence Kohlberg? He had a really interesting, wild life. He was a soldier in World War II. He helped smuggle Jewish refugees out of Nazi-occupied Europe. When the war was over and he got out of the military, this was a time where you could go to Yale and you could test out of classes if you were smart and knew it. And he tested out so much that he just got a degree. He was so brilliant. He practiced at Yale for the rest of his life. In 1971, he went to Belize. He was doing a humanitarian project and he got sick, and that illness caused him a lot of pain and depression for the rest of his life. So in 1988, he was in a medical session. They were treating his illness and he just said, I'm not feeling well. Can I go? They said, sure. And he drove his car to a harbor in Boston and walked into the ocean and died, which from your perspective is morally fine because he didn't want to be in that body anymore. And from my perspective too.
Right. That was his choice. And he wasn't hurting anybody except himself.
So Laura, what are your final thoughts on Lawrence Kohlberg and morality?
Thanks for depressing the hell out of me.
Is it depressing or is it
You're the one who's always telling me that my stories are too depressing. I understand that I've always had a flirtation and a lot of nuance with what I think morals are.
Truth.
I think a lot of my beliefs about morality come from my neurodivergence because people have been telling me my whole life that I should be following these rules that are stupid and arbitrary, and they don't make any sense to me. So why should I? And I think also being raised by a woman who is so black and white and so focused on the right way or the wrong way, I have just naturally fought against it my whole life. The moral choice is the choice that's best for the most people. The moral choice is the choice that isn't intending to harm anybody.
Right. The choice that tries to do the least harm. That choice would be part of Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, where people live in an ideal world, but once a year, everyone has to pull a slip. The person who loses gets killed. But that's the sacrifice that you have to make for everyone else to stay happy.
That's the Japanese belief system, right? You do what's best for the most people. For me, morality is a case-by-case basis. I make my decisions based on what I think is the right choice in that moment. And maybe taking 2 suitcases is not the right choice, but I'm going to keep doing it anyway. So Virginia,
Thank you for your honesty.
don't tell American Airlines. So Virginia, what are your final thoughts on this topic?
One, if you're getting on a flight and you see Laura Ryan waiting in line, watch your butt because she is going to take your overhead compartment space. 2, I agree with you on a lot of this. When we talk about laws, those are just things we've made up that we think are going to work. And laws get repealed and changed, and our Constitution gets changed based on the truth of the now.
Right. And a lot of laws are made up by people in power, and I don't respect most people in power. So why am I going to respect their laws?
I'm sorry, these laws were made up by men. We actually don't listen to what men say. It's funny how people talk about they were convicted in a court of law. What does that mean? That means that on one day, one lawyer made an argument that one judge got on board with, or they convinced a jury.
Yeah, a bunch of randos decided, like with the diddler, we don't need to go to court on this one. I have enough information to convict you
right now. And that's why Laura and I are going to become vigilante justice
seekers.
Right and wrong. It's a lot more complicated than people give it credit for. And I think that most people don't think very deeply about it. And I also think that a lot of rules were made up for dumb people, and I'm smarter than that, so I shouldn't have to follow those rules.
That doesn't sound sociopath.
No, it doesn't, does it? Laura, where can people find you on the internet should they wish to do so?
They can find me on my website, lauraryan.org. If you're interested in working with me professionally and you live in the state of Texas, hop onto that webpage and shoot me an email. You can also find me on my TikTok account. I am Laura Ryan. If you want to watch some pretty cool AI videos that I've made this week.
Laura is using and abusing Sora within an inch of his life. I feel very mixed about it.
You haven't seen my Karen Barbie doll yet.
I sure have.
Shut your trap.
Terrifying.
You can also, if you're interested in our podcast and you want to listen to all the episodes in one place, you can find us at mysistersatherapist.com. Follow our Instagram page, My Sisters a Therapist Instagram. So Virginia, if people don't want to walk into the sea and maybe choose to have a laugh or two, how would they find out about your professional career?
Well, I'm going to plug something I've never plugged on this podcast. I recently renewed publishing for my album, Gothic American. Due to some legal stuff that has to do with other comics and not me, Spotify is not streaming my album in the US, which is very frustrating because I used to get a lot of plays that way. So if you are international, you can 100% listen to my album for free on Spotify. If you are not, you can find it on Apple. You can find it on Pandora. You can find it on my Bandcamp page. I recorded it in 2016, but I think it's still pretty funny. Check out my album, Gothic American. You can find my website at badinia.com, BADINIA. And that's also my Instagram and my TikTok. If you would like to get in touch with the podcast, preferably not as a man trying to get on the podcast.
You can be a man on this podcast, but you probably need to be either a licensed mental health professional or a comedian that Jenny really likes, or Adam Scott. If you're Zach Woods, you can also come on our show.
Not if you're Thomas Middleditch or TJ Miller, because those are both sexual assaulters. And you can write us at hello@My Sister's a Therapist. You can write us if you have a show idea, just want to send us a compliment, or give us a hot tip. If you would like to hire us to promote your project, object, food,
your vegetarian food item,
lotion, you can write us at hireuss@mysistersatherapist.com. Laura, now's the time of the show where you sometimes will share a review or a nice comment or just something to make me feel good for a second. Do you have one to share this week?
I have an Audible review by Bobby, Bobbi, and the title is Funny and Thought-Provoking in Measure. Found the show on my Google Home and was immediately drawn in by the sisters vibe. Their takes on mental health, feminism, and society in general is in turns funny, educational, inspiring, and flirts with depth. I'm glad to hear we flirt with depth.
Thank you, Bobby.
Recommended to anyone interested in exploring mental health with warmth and humor. Thank you, Bobby.
I do think that we flirt with depth. I appreciate you, Bobby.
I think sometimes we get there.
Some weeks more than others. But to Bobby and to all of our listeners, I would like to leave you with some words of wisdom from Billy Ray Valentine, Capricorn, as he said, "We can make it, baby."
Me and you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.